Well, ladies and gentlemen, it seems like the old Max Verstappen is back. Many have said that since winning his first title in 2021, Max has become less aggressive and more cautious on track. But as we've clearly seen this year, that's far from true. The old habits are very much alive. Now, this video is probably going to divide opinions. Some of you might agree with it completely, others may hate it, and some may agree with a few points but not all. That's alright, these are just my personal opinions and observations, so stick with me. First of all, what a season 2024 has been so far. I mean, 8 Red Bull wins, 5 Ferrari wins, 5 McLaren wins, 3 Mercedes wins, and 7 different drivers winning. This year is turning out to be a proper free-for-all battle for wins. I can't even remember the last time we saw such a diverse fight for wins in Formula 1. Usually it's 1 or 2 teams scooping all the wins, but this year it's different. The season began with typical Red Bull dominance, with Max winning 7 out of the first 10 races. But after Miami, everything changed. Red Bull was no longer the quickest car. In fact, it was quite slow compared to McLaren, and on certain tracks, even Ferrari and Mercedes outpaced them. As Red Bull recently revealed, their mid-season upgrades took them in the wrong direction, resulting in a performance drop compared to their rivals. Now, coming back to Max, before Brazil, the last race he won was the Spanish Grand Prix back in June. Since then, he's only managed 4 podiums in 9 races, a bit underwhelming, considering how relentless Max usually is. This shows just how much the car's performance has declined, to the point where even Max can't push it to the podium consistently. One thing still in Max's favour is his lead in the championship. He's ahead of Lando Norris by 62 points, largely thanks to his brilliant performances at the start of the season. But that lead came under threat as Lando began scoring wins and podiums regularly, closing the gap. However, after Brazil, the tide has shifted back in Max's favour. Ever since Red Bull lost its dominant edge, Max's mentality seems to have shifted again, giving us some flashbacks to 2021. Let's take a look at some classic Max moments this season. It all seemed to start at the Austrian Grand Prix, where Max and Lando had their first close fight for the win. Max was leading, with Lando in hot pursuit. Neither gave the other an inch, leading to a collision that ruined both their races. Lando retired, while Max managed to finish in 5th. Another incident occurred at the Hungarian GP when Max, frustrated behind Hamilton's Mercedes, made a late lunge down the inside into turn 1. He made contact with Hamilton's car, launching his own into the air, which ultimately cost him a shot at the podium. In Austin, Max made a very late move on the inside of turn 1 on the opening lap, going wide and handing the lead to Leclerc. Then in the second half of the race, Max's aggressive defense was on full display. When Lando tried to pass him on the outside, Max released the brakes early and dove inside, pushing both cars off the track. Lando managed to keep the position, feeling Max had forced him off, but was later penalised with a 5-second time penalty that saw Max take the podium and finish ahead of Lando. In Mexico though, things went a little awry for Max. On lap 10, Lando attempted a move on the outside of turn 4. Max, holding the inside line, didn't leave space, forcing Lando to cut the corner. Lando held the position, but on the next straight, Max launched a dive bomb on the inside, overshot, and sent both cars off track, allowing the Ferrari behind to pass both of them. For that, Max was hit with 2 10-second time penalties, which, in my opinion, was a bit too harsh from race control. The first penalty seemed a bit unfair, as Lando's outside move was risky, and drivers on the inside usually don't allow themselves to be overtaken like that. Max kept his car well inside the track, so in my opinion, it was just hard racing. The second penalty was more justified, as it was an overambitious move. In the end, Max finished 6th while Lando took 2nd, narrowing the championship gap. But boy did Max come back swinging in Brazil. Max smoked the competition into oblivion in that race. Starting from P17 and winning by about 20 seconds, he set the track on fire in the rain. That was some truly god-tier stuff. While others struggled just to stay on track, Max sliced through the field, finding grip everywhere as if it were a dry race. That has to be one of the top drives of his career so far. With that victory, he now leads Lando by over 60 points in the championship, which essentially means the title race is almost over. Now let's talk about the differences between Lando and Max, as there are some big ones. While I do believe Lando has the potential to be a champion, he just seems to lack that killer instinct and relentless hunger for wins and titles. He's also more prone to mistakes, as is the McLaren team with their strategy, which often costs Lando. He lost the lead from pole on the opening lap so many times that it's hard to keep track. But they're learning, and I think both McLaren and Lando have gained valuable lessons this season in fighting for the championship, which will likely make them stronger next year as they work to avoid these same mistakes. Max, on the other hand, is the opposite. He rarely makes these kinds of errors, if any at all. That's what makes him such a formidable opponent. He's incredibly fast, highly aggressive, and is on another level in challenging conditions compared to the rest of the grid. Max is a perfectionist. He gives 100% and expects the same from every team member. Even if he doesn't have the quickest car, he compensates with his skill, works around the car's issues, and takes advantage of better strategy. Max always delivers his absolute maximum on the track, which is why he's still leading the championship by a significant margin, despite not having the best car for most of the season. This is what makes it so difficult for Lando to beat Max, even with the fastest car. Lando needs to improve his racecraft and adopt a more aggressive approach if he wants to contend with Max. Max is a different beast compared to every other driver on the grid. This year has shown Lando that having the fastest car isn't enough to beat Max. You also need to be smart, because Max won't give an inch easily. Just 3 wins with the fastest car, the same as Leclerc in a Ferrari, won't be enough to fight for the championship. Lando will need to elevate his game significantly. And comparing Max with his teammate isn't even a debate. There's simply no comparison. Max is consistently scoring wins and podiums with that Red Bull, while Checo struggles to finish in the points and often fails to make it into Q3. And it's not that Checo is a bad driver, he's a multiple race winner and has built a solid reputation over his years in F1. This just highlights that it's Max's talent that's making the difference with the car. Max has often said in interviews that he doesn't care about records, which is true to an extent. But what he does care about is winning. He wants to claim the title again this year, and you can clearly see that drive on the track. He's willing to sacrifice chances at race wins and podiums to secure the championship. Ever since Lando began closing in on his lead, Max has been on a single mission: finish ahead of Lando or limit his points to minimize the damage. This determination is making the championship battle incredibly entertaining for us as fans. Love him or hate him, you have to admit this is a man who loves racing more than anything else and still has that same hunger for victory he's shown since he started. When he's not racing on the track, he's on his simulator, always looking to improve. That's next level dedication to racing. Now on to the big question. Should Max dial down the aggressiveness with Lando a bit? While I found Max's comment on the topic amusing, saying he's a 3-time world champion and doesn't need to change anything, I do think he could play it a bit safer from here on. There's no need to repeat the shenanigans we saw in Mexico and risk a harsher penalty when he could simply cruise to the world title. With a sizable lead and only 3 races left, he could afford to tone down the aggression and stay well within the boundaries of the regulations. That's just my opinion though, and I believe Max is smart enough to make the best choice for himself. And now, coming to the final question, is Max the fastest driver on the grid right now? This is a complicated question, as fastest depends on many factors, such as the car, the track, the conditions, and other variables. But I would say he is the quickest overall right now. Before you disagree, let me explain. If all drivers on the current grid were driving cars with equal performance, I believe Max would come out on top in the championship. Now, I'm not saying he'd win every race. There are tracks where other drivers might have the edge, but he'd still be scoring podiums consistently. And there aren't many tracks where Max isn't among the fastest. Saying Max is the most consistently quick driver might be more accurate. If Max has even a slight advantage in car performance, it's game over for the rest of the grid. The same goes for equal performance cars. For anyone to beat Max right now, they'd need a significantly faster car and consistent performances, which drivers like Lando and Charles struggle with. Lewis is probably the only other driver who's shown similar consistency when fighting for championships, and I believe he still has that ability. If Red Bull develops the quickest car or one that's at least on par next year, I think it will be another title for Max. That said, it'll be interesting to see what Ferrari brings to the table next season and how Lewis adjusts to his new team colours. And that's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe. Also, be sure to check out other F1 videos on my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Boom, 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 Max Verstappen. Boom, 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 Max Verstappen. Boom, 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 Max Verstappen. Boom, 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 Max Verstappen.